Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, May 2nd, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today looks pleasant, with a high reaching 76.8 degrees, cooling down tonight to a low of about 57.5 degrees. Coming up on today's episode, we delve into the diplomatic push from the United States encouraging direct talks between officials in Kyiv and Moscow amid their ongoing conflict. We will also investigate the factors contributing to recent price hikes you might be noticing on the fast fashion websites Shein and Temu. What's behind these changes for consumers? We have the analysis on these important international and economic stories coming right up. Stay tuned to Alex's News. Turning now to the international stage and the ongoing war in Ukraine, where the diplomatic landscape seems to be shifting yet again. For more on this complex situation, we bring in our news reporter, Ethan. Ethan, the U.S. appears to be changing its approach to mediating peace talks. What can you tell us?
That's right, Grace. According to reporting from the Kyiv Independent just today, May 2nd, the Trump administration is significantly scaling back its direct role as a mediator between Kyiv and Moscow. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce stated that President Trump believes it is, quote, time for the two warring parties to develop concrete ideas, end quote, themselves.
So the U.S. is essentially telling Ukraine and Russia to talk directly to each other now? Is this a sudden move?
It seems less sudden and more of a follow-through. The Kyiv Independent notes this comes after months of stalled diplomacy. Both Secretary of State Marco Rubio and President Trump had previously warned this could happen if real progress wasn't made. Vice President J.D. Vance echoed this, acknowledging the war won't end quickly, and stressing the responsibility now falls squarely on Russia and Ukraine to find common ground, even if the U.S. says it will still contribute to peace efforts in other ways.
It sounds like the U.S. is trying a bit of diplomatic tough love. Is there any indication of how they might still apply pressure?
There is. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, again reported by the Kyiv Independent, mentioned a large bipartisan group in the Senate, possibly 72 senators, ready to impose sweeping new sanctions and tariffs on Russia if President Putin continues to sidestep serious peace negotiations. So, while stepping back from direct mediation, they seem to be keeping the economic pressure cooker on simmer.
That's fascinating, Ethan, because it seems almost paradoxical, stepping back diplomatically, but then we hear about significant economic and military commitments. What's happening there?
It is a bit of a head-scratcher, Grace, but it seems deliberate. Around May 1st, as reported by Euromaidan Press and The Guardian, the U.S. and Ukraine finalized what's being called a historic minerals deal. This agreement focuses on future resource and infrastructure projects chosen by Ukraine. It's seen as a major political win for both sides after some earlier reported disagreements between the presidents.
A minerals deal amidst all this? What's the strategic thinking behind that? Are they hoping to strike gold for peace?
Well, they're certainly digging deep for solutions, Grace. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, quoted by Euromaidan Press, framed it as sending a, quote, clear message to Russia of the U.S. commitment to a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine, end quote. Some analysis, like that from The Economist cited by Euromaidan Press, suggests it bolsters Ukraine's position and might be a card President Trump intends to play in any future dealings with Putin. It also counters perceptions that support for Ukraine is purely partisan.
And this ties into military support as well?
Directly. The Guardian reports the Trump administration is prepping its first military equipment sale to Ukraine and has approved the first new weapons shipment since taking office, explicitly linking this action to the minerals agreement. So less direct talking, but continued, perhaps even strengthened, material support.
With all these moves, are Kyiv and Moscow actually any closer to finding peace? What are the sticking points?
Sadly, Grace, the core positions seem miles apart. Information synthesized by the Perplexity API, citing U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg, shows Ukraine showed flexibility back in April, agreeing to numerous terms, including a ceasefire during talks. Russia, however, has consistently rejected ceasefire proposals.
What is Russia demanding?
Their demands remain maximalist, essentially asking for terms close to capitulation. According to statements from Foreign Minister Lavrov around late April, cited via Perplexity API, Russia insists on Ukraine's permanent non-alignment, meaning no NATO, recognition of annexed territories like Kherson, and broad demands for, quote, demilitarization, end quote, and, quote, denazification, end quote, plus sanctions relief for Russia. Secretary Rubio himself said on May 1st they remain, quote, still far apart, end quote.
Has Russia even reacted to this U.S. shift in strategy?
No specific public reaction from top officials like Putin or Lavrov has been reported yet, according to Perplexity API. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov did say on April 30th that Ukraine must negotiate directly with Moscow, framing the U.S. as an obstacle. This aligns with Russia's preference and might be an attempt to leverage the U.S. step back. Analysis from the Institute for the Study of War suggests Russia often uses talks as a way to gain concessions while continuing military efforts.
It sounds like a very difficult path forward, Ethan, especially with the human cost involved.
Absolutely, Grace. Amidst the diplomacy, rights groups cited by The Guardian emphasize prisoner releases are crucial. Horrific reports continue about the torture of Ukrainian prisoners in Russian facilities. And compounding the tragedy, The Guardian also notes the United Nations has had to cut humanitarian aid significantly due to falling international funding. It's a grim backdrop to these high-stakes negotiations.
A truly complex and challenging situation. Ethan, thank you for breaking down these latest developments for us in Story 1 this morning.
You're welcome, Grace.
Now for our second story today. If you've been browsing online retailers like Shein or Temu lately, you might be experiencing some sticker shock. Prices seem to be on the rise, and it's tied to a major shift in U.S. trade policy. Joining us now to unpack the details is our reporter, Chloe. Chloe, what exactly is happening with these online shopping giants?
Grace, the big change is the end of a long-standing U.S. tariff exemption known as, quote, de minimis, end quote, for goods coming specifically from China and Hong Kong. This news comes from reporting across NPR, CNN, and analysis synthesized by Perplexity. Essentially, that rule used to let packages valued under $800 enter the U.S. completely duty-free.
Duty-free under $800? That sounds like a pretty significant benefit. How widely was this exemption used?
It was huge. According to CNN, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, was processing nearly 4 million of these small, duty-free shipments every single day, with the vast majority coming from China and Hong Kong. Think about all those small packages from Shein and Temu. That's how they kept prices so incredibly low for so long. Closing this loophole actually started under the previous administration and has continued under the current one, as reported by NPR and CNN.
4 million packages a day is staggering. So why the change now? What's the government's reasoning for ending this exemption?
The U.S. government has laid out several reasons, Grace. Primarily, according to NPR and Perplexity, it's about protecting U.S. businesses and creating a more, quote, level playing field, end quote, against these low-cost imports that weren't paying duties. NPR also notes goals like ensuring fair competition and increasing scrutiny on goods potentially made with forced labor or counterfeit items. Another major point cited, according to NPR and Perplexity, is trying to counter the trafficking of illicit substances like fentanyl, which officials argue could be shipped in these small, hard-to-track packages.
Okay, protecting businesses and tackling illicit goods. But what does this mean financially for the items themselves? How much more are we talking?
It gets complicated and potentially very expensive. Analysis from Perplexity shows shippers now face a choice between two main duty calculation methods. One is an, quote, ad valorem, end quote, duty, which basically means, quote, based on value, end quote. That rate is set at a whopping 120% of the shipment's declared value. So a $50 item could suddenly have $60 in duties added.
120%? Wow, that more than doubles the cost. What's the other option?
The other is a specific flat fee per shipment. As of today, May 2nd, that fee is $100 per package. And get this, it's set to double to $200 per shipment starting June 1st, which is just 30 days from now. Perplexity points out this flat fee really hits low-value items hard. A $10 item facing a $100 duty is effectively a 1,000% tariff today.
A flat $100, soon to be $200? That seems designed to make very cheap items unviable. Are these duties applied on top of existing ones?
That's another layer, Grace. CNN and Perplexity report these new duties can potentially, quote, stack, end quote, on top of existing tariffs, like the Section 301 tariffs on some Chinese goods. This could push the effective total tariff rate as high as 145%, depending on the product. Costs are certainly stacking up for importers. Perplexity also noted some retailers like Shein and Temu already started raising prices in late April in anticipation.
So, the immediate result is higher prices for shoppers, as NPR and CNN confirmed. What are the other ripple effects we might see?
Besides the obvious hit to consumers' wallets, especially lower-income households noted by CNN, there are logistical concerns. NPR reports experts warn of potential shipping delays as customs officials now have to vet millions more packages under stricter rules. It's a massive administrative burden for CBP, handling potentially 4 million time additional packages needing duty assessment daily, according to CNN and Perplexity. Some retailers are trying to adapt. NPR mentioned promoting goods already in U.S. warehouses, but supplies are limited. And Perplexity reported that Hong Kong Post even suspended U.S. deliveries because of the changes.
It sounds like a major disruption. Has there been any pushback or criticism of this policy change?
Yes, there has. While the goal of stopping fentanyl is stated, critics highlighted by Perplexity question if applying duties to asterisk all these packages is the most effective method, suggesting it might overwhelm CBP and actually hinder targeted drug interdiction. There's apparently little hard evidence that fentanyl primarily uses this specific channel. Also, Perplexity notes concerns about the negative impact on U.S. small and medium-sized businesses that rely on these low-value imports for components. They face higher costs and supply chain chaos. KRBD Radio, cited by Perplexity, even reported on a manufacturer in Sitka, Alaska, considering moving overseas or bankruptcy due to these tariffs.
So, potential unintended consequences for U.S. businesses too, a complex situation with wide-ranging impacts. Chloe, thank you for breaking that all down for us.
You're welcome, Grace. And just to note, the information discussed came from reports and analysis by NPR, CNN, Perplexity, and KRBD.
Okay, here are some other headlines. A new AP poll reveals significant public concern about presidential power, with about half of Americans believing the president holds too much authority, compared to just 30% who feel federal judges are overstepping. This comes amid ongoing clashes between former President Donald Trump and the judicial system concerning executive orders, immigration policies, and alleged efforts to weaponize federal agencies. The poll highlights a sharp partisan divide. 50% of Republicans see the judiciary as too powerful, while Democrats express widespread concern about presidential authority. These findings reflect ongoing anxieties about democratic erosion, with experts pointing to polarization and executive overreach as potential threats. In foreign policy, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has maintained strategic restraint, avoiding public criticism of current U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations under the Trump administration. This contrasts sharply with his vocal opposition to the 2015 Obama-era deal. Analysts suggest Netanyahu is hesitant to alienate President Trump, whose pro-Israel stance he values. Privately, however, Netanyahu insists any deal must dismantle Iran's nuclear infrastructure, include its ballistic missile program, and ideally follow the quote-quote Libya model of full disarmament. Current talks show Secretary of State Marco Rubio seeking to prevent all uranium enrichment, a point Iran calls non-negotiable. Despite recent, serious progress reported in talks, significant gaps remain. This muted diplomacy comes as Israel feels strategically stronger, having weakened Iranian proxies and conducted direct strikes in 2024. Turning to space, debris from a failed Soviet-era Venus probe, Cosmos 482, is expected to make an uncontrolled re-entry into Earth's atmosphere around May 2025, after 53 years in orbit. Launched in March 1972 as a companion to the successful Venera 8 lander, a rocket malfunction stranded Cosmos 482 in Earth orbit. While some parts re-entered quickly, the probe's durable 500-kilogram descent module, designed to withstand Venus's harsh atmosphere, remains. Experts believe most of it will burn up upon re-entry, posing minimal risk, though some fragments could potentially reach the surface. On the economic front, there's growing caution about the U.S. jobs market, described as waiting for a shoe to drop. The upcoming April jobs report is expected to show slowing growth, with around 130,000 to 133,000 jobs added, down from March, but still indicating resilience. However, uncertainty surrounding Trump-era tariffs is reportedly causing businesses to postpone investments in hiring. The labor market shows employer hesitancy and record-low job satisfaction, though quit rates remain subdued. Analysts are watching closely for signs that slowing momentum or policy uncertainty could trigger a broader downturn. Finally, concerns are rising over potential cuts to social programs, including Head Start. Reports suggest plans within Project 2025 consider eliminating the Early Childhood Education and Health Program, which serves nearly 800,000 low-income children and families. Advocates warn elimination would severely impact communities, especially rural ones, and worsen the childcare shortage. Recent reports also indicate nearly $1 billion in Head Start funding has been withheld, leading to center closures, alongside job cuts within the overseeing federal agency. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King, with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Pro 2.5 Experimental, Gemini Flash 2.0, Perplexity Sonar Pro, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.